Think about a mall after closing, or an empty airport at 3 in the morning. They're familiar but empty, functional but purposeless, lit in a way that completely erases the sense of time. This phenomena is called liminal spaces. Anthropologists call locations like these non-places. They aren't built for humans to stay in, they exist purely to be transitional spaces. You're meant to pass through them and not stay in them. When you take away the people and the noises, your brain can't reliably predict what's next and starts glitching out. It recognizes the architecture, but it starts panicking at the absence. It triggers an uncanny feeling of a deep and achy nostalgia for a time or place you might not have actually lived through. Psychologically, they feel dreamlike because, just like in a dream, they're distorted, eerie representations of reality. But what happens when you remove the physical space entirely? How can a song convey that exact same unsettling feeling using nothing but sound? And how important is the music to this phenomena? To answer these questions, we need to understand how internet culture turned this quite psychological bug into a massive phenomenon. While the concept of liminality has existed for over a century, the viral internet phenomenon exploded on May 12, 2019. An anonymous user on a 4chan thread asked for unsettling images that just feel off, and a little later, a photo of a fluorescent lit yellow office space was posted with a short backstory about not clipping out of reality. That single post created the Backrooms and gave birth to a whole culture obsessed with empty spaces. Out of that came one of the most popular aesthetic and musical subgenres, liminal dreamcore. Standard liminal spaces lean on realistic photos that feel architecturally correct, but emotionally they're hollow because they're stripped of people or meaning. Dreamcore takes that same absence and adds dream logic. It takes early 2000s childhood nostalgia like playgrounds, old cartoons, saturated skies, but adds surreal, impossible geometry like a hallway that loops forever or a staircase leading into open air. The imagery is usually hazy, bloom-heavy, and slightly distorted, like a memory you can't fully remember clearly. That visual language can actually be translated into music almost perfectly. Just like the visuals blur sharp edges with heavy bloom, the music blurs distant notes using washed-out textures, floating synth pads, and lingering echo effects, also known as delay. So let's look at an example I put together. This song is very repetitive and only has 7 instruments. Most of them are pads. They're spacious, washed out in reverb and delay, and together they form a dreamlike soundscape. The goal here isn't complexity, but rather the feeling. It has to feel vast and dreamlike. To achieve that sound, I used Serum 2 for every layer of every element. It has become one of the most used synthesizers in music, from electronic to pop and even rock music. And not surprisingly, it fits here perfectly. But something is missing here. It feels a little too floaty, like it has no weight. To ground it in reality a little bit more, we can add a sub-bass. It's probably the easiest sound to create since it's a simple sine wave tuned 2 octaves down. But we don't need it to be complicated, because its job is to be the anchor of the song, and it does it perfectly. Nostalgic liminal music usually features a melody. It's never complicated, but it always gets under your skin. The reason it works so perfectly is because of delay. Delay is like yelling in the mountains, where your phrase gets echoed down a few times. The same effect is applied to the melody to make it linger and move around a bit, like a thought you can't quiet down at 3 in the morning. Now, If we combine the layers together, it becomes exactly the type of song that would fit a nostalgic liminal photo or video. But putting layers together is not that simple. You see, every song, regardless of genre, has layers, and each layer lives in 3 dimensions: frequency spectrum, volume, and imaging, or simply put, the stereo field from left to right. If a musician puts all their layers together without doing anything, it'll sound like standing in a shopping mall. You can hear people talking all around you, but you can't make out the exact words. It becomes a soup. The same idea applies to music. Each layer has to have its own home in those 3 dimensions. To do that, musicians carve out space in frequencies with equalizers, balance the volume of layers relative to each other, and adjust panning, meaning whether you hear the sound in the left, middle, or right. And this is how this full example sounds together. The second major subgenre of liminal music takes a darker and more psychological approach. It can be defined by degraded nostalgia, or hauntology if you want the academic term. But long before it became widely known on the internet, hauntology as a term was first introduced in 1993 by a French philosopher and later popularized by a cultural critic, Marc Augé. They used it to describe a cultural feeling, nostalgia for lost futures that never came to pass. In music, that means taking old, comfortable sounds and breaking them, making the audio sound like a distant memory. This whole subgenre applies the uncanny valley effect to sound. Our brains constantly use familiarity to predict what happens next. It's simply how our brains work and what has enabled us to survive for so long as a species. You expect an office building to have co-workers, a hotel to have guests, or a mall to have shoppers. When those expectations are broken, the space starts feeling wrong in a way that's hard to articulate. Hauntological music works the same way. That kind of music sounds almost right. It contains recognizable musical features, like a melody, a chord progression, or a rhythm, but makes it sound slightly off. For example, a melody might repeat forever without developing. A chord progression might avoid a clear resolution. Reverb can make instruments feel distant and detached. The music provides enough context to be recognizable, but not enough to feel normal. Like an empty mall, it resembles something familiar, but it's missing the characteristics that normally make it feel complete. That's why it feels so eerie, because it's almost normal. But unlike dreamcore, this subgenre is the uncanny valley effect applied to music. So let's take a look at an example I made. This one was very fun to work on, and it was inspired by The Caretaker. The Caretaker became known for manipulating old ballroom and big band recordings, especially in the album series like Everywhere at the End of Time. That music often sounds like a distorted, eerie memory of a familiar place, a room that still reminds you of people who are now gone. This fits the concept of his most famous song because it's meant to represent the stages of dementia and memory loss. Those qualities overlap with the idea of liminal spaces, ordinary locations that feel strangely empty, transitional, or detached from normal life. The Caretaker's work has a specific feeling of nostalgia without the person attached to it. Liminal spaces often create a similar feeling, a place designed for activity, but has none of that activity. So, how is it made? Well, first of all, writing a song like that is like writing a more classical piece. Musicians don't set out to write a spooky song. That effect is achieved later by using different effects. Let's start with the main chord progression that will repeat throughout the song. We'll use a piano and strings slowly coming in to make it feel more alive and old school. Both are in E flat major and are played at 104 beats per minute. I used the standard studio grand piano and stock strings that came with Logic Pro. Now, let's add a melody. It has to be simple, like a reminder of the good old times. To further the effect of a distant dream, let's pitch it up a few octaves and play it softly so that it sounds very gentle. As for the crescendo moment, aka the emotional peak of the song, we'll simply duplicate the same piano melody and spread it across a few layers of strings and cello. We'll also make it subtle so it doesn't compete with the piano. Remember the shopping mall analogy? Yeah, that's exactly it. It sounds pretty, yet pretty ordinary. The whole magic trick that made the caretaker associated with liminal spaces is in the effects. He uses a lot of effects to achieve his famous degraded effect, as if the record is coming out of an old, broken radio. When musicians produce songs, half the battle is figuring out the right mood of the song and how you can achieve that. The best and most beloved songs are not always the ones that are technically perfect. Usually, it's the ones that manage to capture a specific feeling really well. So, to make it fit the liminal space phenomena, we will add a degradation effect. For this, we'll use a tool called RC20 on the piano layer and another instance of it on the whole song to glue it together and create the famous effect. As you can see, if you're a musician or have a friend who makes music, the tools you use rarely matter after becoming experienced enough. This song was mostly built using the stock instruments that came with Logic. So what does it mean for the broader phenomena? Well, I think that liminal spaces act as a gateway to the good old times. When we were kids, life seemed way easier than it actually was. We had no responsibilities, nor did we have bills to pay. Liminal spaces are transitional spaces by design. They remind us of the past while, in a way, helping us settle into the next chapter of our lives without letting go of our memories. And music is one of the fundamental aspects of this phenomena because it helps us experience our emotions better, in a more focused way. As for the creepy subgenres, I think it's fair to say that it's an equivalent to horror movies. We watch scary films to experience danger while being physically safe. Every sound cue and soundtrack only heighten the stakes and make us more aware of whatever is happening. And the fact that such spaces echo in our memories makes each photo and video feel like it's a place that you have personally visited. And to me, it's one of the most favorite internet phenomena I've seen in a while. Unique, yet familiar. Distant, yet close. Unknown, yet personal. My name is Hvll. Stay awesome and keep making this world a better place.